always loved the Ghostbusters. I was lucky enough to see the first film in a cinema, which was really rare for me back in the day. I recorded as many episodes of the cartoon onto a single VHS tape as I could and wore the thing out rewatching them. I honestly don't remember when I got to see the sequel, but I'm guessing it was on home rental. I also lost many hours in front of my Commodore 64, playing the old Activision game with the adorable 8-bit rendition of the theme. Ghostbusters! Hell, I even wrote and tried making a feature-length Ghostbusters fan film back in the day.
Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night?
Do you experience feelings of dread around the barbecue, garage, or shed?
Have you or any of your family ever seen a spook, spectre, or ghost?
Yeah, the less said about that, the better. Long story short, I am a big Ghostbusters fan. It is truly one of my top fandoms. So when they announced a new film that was set in the same continuity as the original film, I was excited. Even after the disappointment of 2016. But then COVID hit. The film got pushed back a bunch of times, and it was really starting to look like it would never be released. After all of that, Sony, in their infinite wisdom, decided to do a staggered release. For those not in the know, a staggered release is when a studio wants to give the internet commentators time to spoil all the major beats of a film for anyone not residing in the US. Guess who knew all about the big reveals in the end long before going to see the film? Just to set the scene a little bit, I finally got to see Afterlife at an exclusive screening at my local cinema that I didn't know about. I was actually going to see the new James Bond film when I saw in their screening schedule that they had a session of Afterlife. I immediately bought my ticket and had to fill 4 hours while I excitedly waited. So, after all that build-up, to say I was excited about finally getting to see this film is like saying the Titanic has an issue with rising damp. I was practically vibrating, I was so excited. Hell, I almost cosplayed. Unfortunately, my jumpsuit doesn't fit as well as it used to. Probably shrank in the wash or something. I wanted to like this film so much. And I did. I really did. Mostly.
What are you doing here in Somerville anyway?
Honestly, my mom won't say it, but we're completely broke. And the only thing that's left in our name is this creepy old farmhouse our grandfather left us in the middle of nowhere. Why'd you bring me up here?
Entertainment value?
What is that?
I don't know.
It is a good film. Truly. What got me so excited in the trailers was the expectation of it being a new story in a new location but still having ties to the originals. I was expecting something radically different to what had come before, and that was exactly what I got. This is not 84 Ghostbusters, but it has the DNA of the 84 film running throughout it. Afterlife was directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of the original Ghostbusters director, producer Ivan Reitman. And while they share the same name, they do not share the same sensibilities when it comes to filmmaking. Ivan made Stripes and Twins and Kindergarten Cop. Jason is more of an indie darling, having made films like Thank You for Smoking and Juno. And to his credit, Jason has not tried to speak in his father's voice. Instead, he has made a Ghostbusters film that, while honouring the legacy that his father helped create, is very much filtered through his own unique viewpoint. It wears its sincerity and its nostalgia right there on its sleeve. This film is not a comedy. It's a fun film, don't get me wrong. But in the way that the 2016 remake leaned too far into the comedy, this film seems to have swung in the opposite direction. This is very much a family film, both in execution and in theme. The story is very much centered on families and the complicated messes they can become. But it's not meant to be a funny film, even though it does have some funny moments. In fact, the tone shifts almost 180 degrees towards the end, when we get a very welcome cameo from some very old friends. I did like the new characters introduced. The runaway star of the film is Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace. McKenna really does pull the film together as the awkward kid who's a little too used to people around her ignoring her. Her story of finally finding herself by becoming part of her grandfather's world is the backbone of the film, and McKenna is both painfully awkward but completely endearing. Her mother, played by Carrie Coon, does a good job as a good mum doing a bad job with the best of intentions. She has a lot of love for her kids, but because of a complicated relationship with her absent father, she tends to make choices based on her own pain rather than her kids' needs. She has some great chemistry with both the kids though. Then there's the older brother character, played by Stranger Things' Finn Wolfhard, who seems to have some contractual obligation not to cut his hair until his balls drop. He's almost a prototypical awkward, horny 15-year-old kid who desperately wants to fit in. His character suffers a little as his sole reason for being included seems only to get the car running. And then we have Paul Rudd, playing a geologist moonlighting as a substitute teacher. Paul just seems to be completely thrilled that he's in a Ghostbusters film. He is, of course, completely likable as the other half of the Dr. Exposition team, who has to explain things to the audience and each other. And finally, there are the characters of Podcast and Lucky. Podcast does become quite endearing after a while, with his infectious enthusiasm for anything weird. Lucky, on the other hand, well, she does a great job of giving Finn someone to talk to. The film is absolutely dripping in nostalgia, but the majority of it is not overt or in your face. If you don't get some of the references, the only indication you might be missing something would be some guy in his 40s laughing to himself in the back of the cinema. There are, however, some moments that, if you're not an aficionado of the first films, you might not get the significance of, especially at the film's big climax, which somehow feels a lot less epic than in 1984. The film is very much a love letter to the original film, especially towards the late Harold Ramis. In fact, if Harold hadn't passed away, I don't think this film would have been made in the same way. The one part where the nostalgia really worked against the film was in the music. As much as possible, they tried to use all the musical cues from the original film, and it really didn't fit with the tone of the new story. It reminded me a lot of the unofficial Ghostbusters 3 video game, which just shoehorned the film's themes in wherever it could. I enjoyed this film and I had a really good time watching it, but I have to admit to something being just a little off. Scenes where I should have been feeling a sense of excitement or emotion left me feeling a little flat. One big issue I realized was that there was no real sense of urgency and no real stakes until late in the film. The major sequence seen in most of the trailers of them chasing a ghost through the streets of the town had no weight to it, as there was no reason to catch this ghost other than trying out the equipment. On the whole, this film feels like it was based on the legend of a story rather than the story itself, in that no one remembers what actually happened, so they based it on people's recollections and emotions. There is a lot of sweetness to it and a lot of callbacks that tugged on this old fanboy's heart, which may be elevating my opinion of the film higher than it deserves, but really shouldn't take away from it either. But I do recommend it. If you're an old school fan, it won't piss you off like the 2016 version did. If you're a new fan, there is plenty here to like, but a cursory viewing of the original before going in won't go astray. Oh, and for the record, Muncher is no Slimer.